Hello, I'm Annette Young and welcome to the 51%, a show about women reshaping our world. Coming up, in Pakistan, authorities bust a criminal network that had been trafficking young Pakistani Christian women to China. Also, we meet Aissata Lam, a Mauritanian entrepreneur who's in Paris to attend a meeting of the G7 Advisory Council on Gender Equality. But we begin in Pakistan, where authorities have arrested members of a prostitution ring trafficking young Pakistani women to China. The gangs were mainly targeting members of the country's Christian minority, offering poor families false promises of marriage to Chinese men who they said had converted to Christianity. But some of the women have reportedly ended up being forced into sex slavery. Catherine Bennett has more.
Hundreds of Pakistani women and girls have been sent away from home in recent months to become wives to Chinese men. Muqaddas Ashraf is one of those girls. Last year, her family married her off to a Chinese man who became abusive. She was only 16 years old.
Last Christmas, I was in China. My husband had beaten me once that evening when I said I wanted to go to church. He was tired, but I was insisting, and he slapped me and stepped on my phone, breaking it.
Her family thought the marriage could lift their daughter out of poverty and that her new husband was a converted Christian.
We're not greedy. We didn't receive any money from them. Our only belief was that we were giving our daughter a chance at a better life. We were not expecting this kind of behaviour.
Muqaddas is now back home in Pakistan, pregnant and seeking a divorce. Her situation is not unique, but she may be one of the luckier ones. Human Rights Watch sounded the alarm earlier this year on the matchmaking services serving as a cover for trafficking women to China. Chinese men pay marriage brokers to find them a wife. These brokers then pay Pakistani clerics to help them find impoverished women in their congregations. Pakistani families are promised regular monthly payments or even visas in return for a bride. But these marriages often end in sexual slavery, as would have been the case for the victims of a cross-country prostitution ring busted earlier this month. China has said that it is cooperating with Pakistan to crack down on sham marriages.
Now, France, which is currently holding the G7 presidency, has made gender equality a top priority. Ahead of the G7 summit in Biarritz this August, Paris this week held a ministerial meeting for ministers from G7 countries responsible for promoting women's rights. Other topics on the table include addressing sexual violence, promoting feminist diplomacy, and also boosting the number of female entrepreneurs. With me today is Aissata Lam, a co-founder and president of the Mauritanian Youth Chamber of Commerce. She's also a member of the G7 Advisory Council on Gender Equality, along with such notables as actor Emma Watson and Nobel Peace Prize winner Nadia Murad. Aissata, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me.
How crucial is it to boost the number of female entrepreneurs across Africa?
Well, as you know, Africa is one of the continent that is experiencing the highest growth. In 2025, it will be the continent where most of the young population will live, and more than half of the population is women. And we know that female participation in economic activities in crucial sectors such as agriculture, fisheries, livestock, and different industries, they are the most active in them. But sadly, they are misrepresented in terms of number, in terms of participation that is not translated in really economic value. Why is that? Because they're mostly in the informal sector, and sadly, not enough resources are made available for them in order to translate their efforts into actual outputs.
Now, you were born in Mauritania, but you've lived and studied abroad. But what was it that made you decide to come back and live in Mauritania?
I'm asked that question a lot. It comes as a surprise. I don't know necessarily why, but I feel like the concept of going back, in my family, we've been traveling a lot and have lived most of our time outside of Mauritania. But going back to the country, visiting or being established there is just natural. So I'm Mauritanian, and the fact that I lived abroad doesn't change that fact. So I'm really happy to contribute to put my small contribution on the plate. So for me, it's just natural.
It's an obvious choice as far as you're concerned. Let's just take a pause there, Aissata, because the fact that Mauritania ranks 136 out of the 149 countries on the World Economic Forum's Global Gender Gap Rating. This report takes a look at how women activists are fighting an uphill battle and pushing for tougher penalties for sexual violence and discrimination in a highly conservative Muslim society.
Zara has lived through a mother's worst nightmare. Months after the attack on her 5-year-old daughter, emotions are still raw.
He came, he took my daughter whilst I was asleep. He took her away and he raped her. She had to have an operation.
The rapist, a serial paedophile, was sentenced to 10 years in jail. But according to the Association of Women Heads of Family, sexual offenders in Mauritania are often released well before the end of their sentences. There are calls for more extensive legislation with regards to women's rights, and in 2016, new legislation was drafted seeking much harsher penalties for sexual violence.
We need this law because we know that violence against women is skyrocketing.
But in this religiously conservative country, the bill proved to be too controversial. It was rejected by Parliament twice and has now been withdrawn by the government.
We cannot adopt a law which contradicts Sharia law, which is the basis of the nation's constitution.
Opponents of the bill also criticise its wording. They say that the notion of gender in the title would pave the way for a possible defence of homosexuality, which is illegal in Mauritania. But among those that rejected the draft legislation, some are willing to seek a compromise to achieve better protection of women's rights.
Women clearly need this protection. No matter how tolerant our society is with regard to women, they're still considered as lesser in many regards, in mindsets and in many practices.
It's an opinion that's echoed by the NGO Human Rights Watch. In their report published in September, they said that even the draft legislation would not go far enough in tackling these issues.
And watching that report with me in the studio is Aissata Lam, a co-founder and president of the Mauritanian Youth Chamber of Commerce and also a member of the G7 Advisory Council on Gender Equality. When you look at that report and you see the society that Mauritania is, how hard was it for you, given that you've lived so much of your life abroad, to come back in and live there?
It was not like a difficult choice. Of course, the landscape, the environment is different from North America, Europe. But coming back, you know that you're not going to live in Paris or you're not going to live in Montreal. So there's already this state of mind. So living in Nouakchott, I was not expecting to have the same infrastructure, the same comfort. So I think that's paramount when analyzing the situation, because we tend to forget that they're completely different environments. But most of all, this is also what makes young people like me want to go back to try to contribute in their own way. And for example, at the Youth Chamber of Commerce, we do initiatives to try to change the way of doing things slightly, not by chucking people or bringing controversy on the table, but small actions that lead to actually like real impact on the ground.
So evolution as opposed to revolution.
Absolutely. But I do admire those who also use revolution as a way. It's just a different approach.
So what needs to be done in order to improve the conditions for women in Mauritania?
Well, the report was talking about a specific law that was rejected twice, and we've seen it in the news recently. Of course, I think it's very sad because we're talking about women's rights, human rights, and a couple of days ago, I saw a friend posting on Facebook that her cousin was raped by their neighbor, and she was outraged. She's a feminist and activist, and she said, "I can't remain silent, even though in our culture, in our society, it's really encouraged just to let it go and to keep quiet." But I think the new generation is now saying enough is enough. And the government, the parliament will see that the expression power to the people, power to the youth will really come to play. And having laws such as this one is really, really important. And in our work at the G7 Gender Equality Council, this is exactly the type of laws that we want to encourage.
What do you hope this G7 Advisory Council is going to achieve, or is it just for show?
It is not just for show, absolutely. The members of this council are very dedicated people from international civil society. I feel so honored to be among people such as Dr. Mukwege, Nadia Mourad. When just being next to them, you feel, wow, okay, there's a pressure to accomplish something. So it is definitely not for sure. The council's role is crucial, I think, and I'm happy that the President Macron put it really in the center of his presidency, and he really, really made strong calls that encourage us also to work hard on the report in order for it to be compelling, to be ambitious, and also aggressive in the sense that, okay, you don't have a choice. Like, gender issues are not just an annex that we can put on paper. It's really essential if we want to see this agenda advance around the world.
Aissata Lam, it's been great speaking to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
And that's it for now. You can also connect with us via our Facebook page, that of course being France24.51%, or do send us a tweet at _51%. So until our next show, bye for now.